few people who could hold a stage and with the power, with so little said in movement, and hold a stage as well as Jose could.
It was quite a real big, important thing in my life. You had to be an actor first, and then to do those characters, and that I like that, because I feel more an actor dancer than a dancing dancer.
Repetitious theme. It's the wheel of fate. That's what it is.
You can name about 3 or 4 names in the middle of last century that were the pivotal figures in defining what dance was. And certainly at the top of that list is Balanchine and Tudor, and in modern dance, Graham and Limo.
Jose Arcadio Limon was born on January 12, 1908, in Culiacan, Mexico. Limon was the oldest of 11 children, however 4 of his siblings died in infancy. Limon's father, Florencio Limon, was a musician and conductor of French and Spanish descent. His mother, Francisca, was the daughter of a school teacher and came from Indian and Spanish descent. In 1910, when Limon was only 2 years old, the Mexican Revolution of 1910 threatened the family's safety in Culiacan, and also caused his father to lose his job as at a music academy. The family moved around in Mexico to Hermosillo, Nogales, and several other cities before ultimately immigrating to the United States through Tucson, Arizona. Ultimately, the family settled in LA, California, where Limon attended Lincoln High School. In 1926, Limon graduated high school and decided he wanted to become a painter, so he enrolled at UCLA to study art. Eventually, Limon became frustrated with his study of art and decided to make a change. In 1928, he left the art program after only 2 years and decided to move across the nation to New York. New York was where Limon got appropriated with dance. He attended a performance by Harold Kreutzberg and Giovanni Giorgi. The performance by Kreutzberg, a German expressionist, touched him deeply, and Limon instantaneously became fixated on dance and training to become a dancer. At 22 years old, Limon started dancing with Doris Humphrey and Charles Weidman at the Humphrey Weidman Studio and began dancing professionally with their company through 1940. After World War II, Limon left Humphrey Weidman Dance Company, got married to Pauline Lawrence, and started his own dance company all in a 10-month span. This was a turning point for Limon. The name of his dance company was the Jose Limon Dance Company and is now known as the Limon Dance Company. Limon is remembered as a pioneer of modern dance and the modern dance movement in the United States. His works were said to focus on exploring human character with a focus on the prevailing strengths and weaknesses. 3 of his most well-known works include the Mors Pavane, Missa Brevis, and La Malinche. We will touch on the first 2 in a little, but these 3 works are not Limon's only contribution to dance. He choreographed a new piece at least every year, all the way up to his death. But he's also credited with furthering the modern dance style of his mentors Doris Humphrey and Charles Weidman, in a style of dance known as the Limon technique. The technique was in direct opposition to the rigid confines of classical ballet and allowed performers to evoke human emotion in a less stylized manner that better reflected the natural movements of the human body. Some of the things he emphasized within the Limon technique included proper breathing, fall and recovery, rebound and isolation. However, nothing was more core to the technique than physical expression of the human spirit. Limon's main network with other choreographers pertained to his connection to Doris Humphrey and Charles Weidman, but he also worked with famous performers over his career, such as Pauline Kroger. His work stood out by itself, though, and his dance company was the first to travel abroad on a cultural mission through the United States State Department. And his work was honored with awards such as 4 honorary doctorates, the Cabizio Dance Award, and the Dance Magazine Award. In 1972, Limon died of cancer. He was only 64 years old, but he left a remarkable legacy.
The best of Limon will stand up to the test of time. I think it's very important that it be retained in repertory. I think it's very important that dancers feel the Limon Humphrey spirit in their bodies.
Morris Pavard is one of the greatest modern dances I think ever made because of its musicality and how succinct the characterizations are. It's taken me some years to look back and see what I do owe to him. It was very important that he was a man of color who was grappling with the European hierarchy of beauty and importance.
Jose Limon choreographed the Morris Pavane in 1949. It is considered to be arguably his most famous work. The piece is a 20-minute-long ballet that is based on William Shakespeare's Othello. Limon stated that he sought to recount the story of Othello through gestures. We just heard in a clip that Limon designed the characters to be succinct, and even more so, I'd say they represent archetypes, not individuals. The color that each of the four performers sports represents not just a color, but a construct. Purple represents nobility. Gold reflects deceit. Crimson stands for seduction, and white corresponds to innocence. The interaction between the four characters is intense at times. Nobility instigates most of the interaction by shrugging off deceit and later embracing innocence in a romantic way. As mentioned, Limon wanted to accentuate the story through gestures, and we will notice, like we will in the other piece that we examine, he's able to accomplish this in part by his willingness to have no real background to his works. Instead, having a stage with no background allows for heightened awareness of some of his movements and gestures through the piece. The movements in this piece are sudden and dramatic. There's quite a bit of head shrugging throughout the piece. Another movement I noticed to be prevalent was the use of long, slow, elongated arm movements that almost undermine the pace of the feet movements in a carefully planned way that gives the piece the effect of telling a story. Limon took a lot from his mentor Doris Humphrey, and one of those principal movements, fall and recovery, is on display in this work. The viewer can also see a lot of upward bound movements that emphasize height, such as the broad and drawn out leg gestures. Jose Limon choreographed Missa Brevis in 1958. The music behind the piece is Missa Brevis in Tempori Bella by Zoltan Kodaly. The piece has incredible depth and calculation. To exemplify this, we see at the beginning of the clip, the men are in a circle with their heads held high and arms outstretched above their heads, while the female performers all spin inwards and put their hands in an outstretched motion. We see the intricacy as the performers repeat this motion and then build on it after repeating it, which shows a level of depth and calculation to each of the movements within the piece. The piece is made intricate in little ways like this, sure, but what I found really interesting about the piece, though, was an emphasis on three elements: stationary performers, arm movement and positioning, and head angle. Starting first with the stationary element of the dance. We see several of the dancers are stationary during many parts of the performance. This nuance really displays the patience and precision to Limon's work. There simply is no wasted movement. Instead, it has the opposite effect on the viewer. There was times throughout the performance I was almost antsy for some of the performers to start moving again. It added a level of anticipation to the dance. The next element that stood out was the voracious arm movements mixed with exaggerated straining arm positions. Limon's aesthetic and impact on modern dance really shine here. His work is not just about footwork. In fact, much of the dance relies heavily on a variety of arm movements and poses. Among other things, we see the dancers outstretch their hands in the air, but slightly to the sides. We see unique spins where the viewer's focus is directed to the performer's open palms. We see hands reaching, almost grasping up to the air. We see hands being shot out poignantly while performers skip across the stage. We see arms tucked against bodies while hands turn over in sort of an I don't know expression. We see dancers at times use their hands to cover their faces, and we see dancers fall forward, sort of dramatically dragging their hands along with them. There's also a subtle emphasis on head angle, or how the performer holds their head, at times throughout. Particularly when the performers are in stationary positions, we see them curiously look much higher than eye level in a pretentious or cocky way.
The importance of Limon is in his work. He knew that he was part of a common humanity and was expressing that humanity. I think that the importance of Limon is that he represents dance at its most emotionally and theatrically accessible. If you put a good Limon work in front of any audience, it will gather the story and it will feel the flow, it will get the impact.
Jose has left a body of work for us that is among the most important dance works of the 20th century.
In education programs, just in the Ailey Company, bringing his works into our repertory has a great deal to do with the kind of respect that he garnered as a great artist and part of the fabric of dance in this country.